Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson, Graphing the Drought. We will be learning new vocabulary that will help us to think and talk about drought. We will learn about different types of graphs, and we will brainstorm ways to conserve water. Let's work through these terms together and write them down in our garden journals. Our first word is water cycle. Water cycle is water moving from land to air and back again. Today we will focus on two big parts of the water cycle: precipitation and evaporation. Precipitation is water that falls from the sky. Can you think of different types of precipitation? I think of snow and rain. Our next word is evaporation. Evaporation is when liquid turns into gas. Heat from the sun causes water to change form. When liquid becomes gas, it then rises into the sky as water vapor and condenses, creating clouds. How do you think water then makes its way back to the ground from these clouds? Precipitation. Our next word is drought. When there is a lack of precipitation over a long period of time, resulting in a water shortage. This is not good for human, plants, or people. Next we have watersheds. A watershed is an area of land where all of the water drains and collects into one place. Watersheds are made up of ridges, valleys, streams, lakes, and oceans. But if a drought causes less precipitation, it means less water flowing through our watersheds. Our last word is graphing. Now you may have heard about this in math class. A graph is a drawing that shows mathematical information with lines, shapes, and colors. Let's look at some different types of graphs that give us weather and climate information. This is what we call a line graph. Which months do you think Atascadero might be most likely to experience dry conditions that could potentially cause a drought? How about least likely? Write what you think the answer is in your garden journal. Go ahead and pause the screen while you finish writing your response. This type of graph is what we call a bar graph. It gives us the same information as the line graph does, but instead uses bars to show data. How does this graph compare to the previous graph? It should be the opposite. The rainy months happen when the temperature is low, and vice versa. Is this similar to what you predicted? This is a drought map from November of 2019. Would you say California was in a drought or not? This is a climate map that shows an average of how much rainfall we receive in different parts of San Luis Obispo County. What do you notice? What city receives the most rainfall on average? How about the least amount of rainfall? Why do you think that this is? Which city is most likely to experience drought conditions? Write your thoughts in your garden journals. Now over to your garden teacher to see what's happening in the garden.
Hi everyone, it's Gloria here at the San Benito School Garden, and today we've been learning about drought and how we can measure drought. So we learned in the video about creating a graph, but to create that graph you also have to have some information first. Do you know what kind of information you might need? You need to know how many inches of rain you've gotten in a certain time frame, which could be a week or a month or a day. I think the graphs we're looking at it month by month. So how can we collect that information? Do you have any ideas? How can we figure out how many inches of rain we get in a month? Well, what you need to do is you need to create a rain gauge. A rain gauge is a container that fills up with water when it rains, and then you can measure how much water is in that container, and from there know how much how many inches of rain that you've gotten. So today I brought out this plastic container. It's what I could find in the garden. If you have any kind of clear plastic container at home that you have permission to write on and permission to use for your rain gauge, then you can do this project as well. So what I'm going to do is I need to get a ruler from the shed, and I will be right back to finish this demonstration. All right, so I am back now with my ruler, and what I'm going to do is look at the ruler, figure out where 1 is, and 1 is going to go at the bottom of my container. Because when it rains, the bottom is what is going to fill up first. So that's where 1 inch of water is going to be. And then as it continues to fill, it's going to get more and more inches of rain are going to build up. So it's really important that the ruler is straight up and down against your container. You don't want it to be like this, because that is going to alter the results or change the results into something that is not going to give you an accurate measurement. So it needs to be straight up and down. You need to get your marker or some sort of pin to do the marking, and draw a line. This marker's not working, but I have other ones, so hopefully one of them will work. That one's not working. Third time, hopefully the charm. Yes. So 1 inch. You're going to have a line at 1 inch, a line at 2 inch, a line at 3 inch, a line at 4 inch. My container only goes to 4 inches, but if yours is taller, you can keep going as tall as the container is. Then I don't need my ruler anymore, but I do need to label my lines. Putting a 1 at the bottom, 2 above it, 3 above it, and 4 above it. So that way I know that when it gets to this first line, it's 1 inch. When it gets to the second line, it's 2 inch, and so on. So this is a rain gauge. And to use it, you just need to find a flat surface outdoors, somewhere that's not underneath any trees or any structures which will change the amount of rainfall. There is going to be less rain that's actually dripping underneath trees because they some of the rain will run off the outside of the tree. And when you find that spot, you're going to set your rain gauge there. And then what you need to do is every time after a big rainstorm comes through, you need to measure your rain, write it down. You can use your garden journal for this if you like. And once you have written it down, you actually pour that water out. Then you set it up again. Any ideas why you might want to pour that water out before collecting more rain? It maybe seems like you could just leave this out here, let one rainstorm come through, fill it up to a certain amount, another rainstorm, it fills up a little more, another rainstorm, it fills up a little more. And wouldn't that be a good way to just get the overall amount of rain that you got in that month, to just leave this out for a month? Well, it's not actually going to give you an accurate measurement, because what's going to happen is in between your first rainstorm and your second rainstorm, you might have a few sunny days. And what happens when the sun comes out to water? It evaporates, right? That water goes back and joins the sky in that other part of the water cycle. It becomes water vapor and enters into the atmosphere, and eventually then turns into clouds and condenses and rains down on the ground. But what that will mean is that you might have gotten 2 inches of rain from that storm, But after the sun comes out, it might go down to 1 inch. And if you didn't record your results right away, you would never have known that you actually got 2 inches of rain because during that storm, because you would not have been recording it for that time. And then you would come back and you would just see maybe 1 inch, or maybe you would have your overall amount of rain. Maybe it would be up at 4 inches, but it wouldn't be at 5 inches where it should have been if it hadn't evaporated from that one rainstorm. So hopefully this makes sense, why it's so important to collect your data after every rainstorm. And that is how we get the information that we need to be able to graph a drought and to figure out if we've had a normal amount of rainfall in a year or an abnormally dry year, which would indicate that we maybe are in a drought. All right, hope you have fun with making a rain gauge, and hope we have some good rain soon.
You may have already worked through some of these questions with your garden teacher, but take some time to pause the screen and write your responses in your garden journals. That's all for today. We'll see you next time.